This is the video lecture to accompany Chapter 4 in Greek Word Studies for Everyone. And finally, right, after you've built your skill, learning to read the Greek alphabet, sound out words, learn a little bit about the transmission of the Greek New Testament and the possible additions of the Greek New Testament, we're going to finally actually learn about some Greek word study tools. And we're going to really recommend two that we put on the top of our list. First off, in the chapter, though, you'll notice we talk about Greek word study resources you should not use. and there are many decent resources. Notice we've really tried to avoid naming resources. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings and things like that. But imagine if I were giving a seminar on the best steak you can have. And so somebody in the back is always going to raise their hand. Well, can I eat hamburger? Then someone else is going to raise their hand. Can I eat dirt? Well, you can eat hamburger and you can eat dirt, but this is a seminar on the best, on the best beef you can eat. And so analogously, we're trying to talk about the best Greek word study resources. So don't email me and say my uncle gave me this thing, this resource, or this series of books that was published in the 1800s, and I'm going to say, yeah, there's some valuable things in there. Okay, sure, keep that. I never want to throw away a Greek resource, but let's use the best resources we have available. And we recommend two of them, and they are this lexicon, and it's listed as under Donker. Donker is the most recent editor who's worked on it. Sometimes it's called Donker's Lexicon, but it is important that you note exactly which one it is. It's a Greek-English lexicon of the New Testament and other early Christian literature. It's a third edition. Let's take a look at it on Amazon. There it is. That's what it looks like. Notice it is a third edition. That is the most recent edition. And it's expensive. Okay, I'm just going to tell you the truth. Now, we talk about some free online resources you can use, but this is the best, the absolute best lexicon for the New Testament. Now, we've talked about this a little bit before, but let's make sure you know what a lexicon is, right? A lexicon is just another word for a dictionary. It's often used with more technical dictionaries or dictionaries related to classical languages, but it just means dictionary. And so we're talking about this is the best dictionary that you can get for the New Testament. And one of the wonderful things it does is it lists and numbers the semantic range of the word. So we'll say this word could mean this, it could mean this, it could mean this. It's laid out very nicely. So for example, if I go to I have scanned in a page from the BDAG lexicon, and let's move it around a little bit here. You can see the words are in alphabetical order, right? Here's peinao, to be hungry. And then we have the verb the noun peira, meaning trial or temptation or testing. And then we have the verb that we're going to look at. The verb is peirazo, right? And you'll notice, this is, again, the printed edition of the lexicon, how helpfully the definitions and giving us the semantic range are numbered. Notice how they're numbered, and they're in bold. This is telling us peirazo could mean to make an effort to do something, to try, to attempt, to endeavor to discover the nature or character of something by testing, to try, to make trial of, to put to the test. And because you've already done the section in the book on word study fallacies, you're not tempted to try to put all these meanings, and this is just two of them, into every instance of the word. You realize words have a range of meaning. The numbered definitions here are giving us the range of meaning. Now, footnote, this lexicon was created by many, many people over many, many years. It's very good. It's very reliable, but it's not scripture. It's not inerrant. So sometimes someone who's very careful with the language might say, well, I would add another definition, or I might combine those, or I might say that slightly differently. So don't be confused and think that these word study tools, these lexicons, are inerrant. They are not inerrant. Very helpful. We default expect them to be accurate, but there's no promise of that. Okay, so peirazo, we highlighted two of the definitions, and we go over here to the next column. Notice there's these subcategories too underneath them. Then we have the third number definition, to attempt to entrap, through a process of inquiry to test. Jesus was so treated by his opponents. And notice the scripture references you can look up. They're very helpful, and extra biblical materials as well. And then the fourth numbered definition right here is to entice to improper behavior or to tempt. And again, you can look up scripture references. Now, many of you might use this in a Bible study software program like Logos or like Accordance. These are two of the main ones. And I'm just going to show you, if you look up a word, here it is, peirazo. It's going to look very similar, right? This is in a Bible software program company that's gone out of business, so you can't have this particular, but it's going to look the same. So this is the digital version of BDAG. Notice how the numbered definitions give us the semantic range. We glanced at those already. Then there are subcategories underneath those. So you have 2A, 2B, 2C, but all of those are under this broad category. And then we skim on down here to 3, right? I personally think the formatting of the print edition is even more clear, but it is nice when you have a digital edition like this. Usually you can hover over the scripture references and it will hop right to them, so you don't have to physically look them up. You can skim through them very quickly, and I have mine set up here to give me both the Greek and the English as I hover over the scripture citation there. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that so? BDAG. Someone is wondering why is this called BDAG if Donker is the editor? Well, there were other people who worked on it. In fact, the second edition of this was BAGD, and Donker's initial was last. That stood for Bauer, Arndt, Gingrich, and Donker. Donker was the new guy on the block in the late 1970s, but after his major revision, his initial got moved up to the second place, and that's why the third edition is called BDAG, or BDAG. BDAG, the best New Testament Greek lexicon. We're going to look at a picture of it right there again. And so don't be confused by other editions. You don't want the second edition. You don't want the first edition. The third edition is significantly better in terms of formatting. And this is the lexicon, the dictionary that you want. Okay? The second of the two major resources we're recommending is a theological dictionary set. The title of it is the New International Dictionary of New Testament Theology and Exegesis. I had to take a breath almost there in the middle to get that. So it is known as NIDNTTE. You can see how New Testament scholars love to use abbreviations. So their major lexicon they call BDAG or BDAG, and this is called NIDNTTE, the New International Dictionary of New Testament Theology and Exegesis. There used to be an earlier edition, NIDNTT, without the exegesis, but it was so thoroughly revised that it was slightly renamed, and Moises Silva now is listed as the only editor who's named by name. There are other people who've worked, who provided foundational work to some of the entries, but really he's so thoroughly reworked it that he rightly is given that place, that position as almost the author, but the lead editor / author of the work. If you look at this on Amazon, this is what it looks like. It's a 5-volume work. And you may be asking yourself, this is these blue volumes over here on the left, you may be asking yourself, how is this different from a lexicon? Well, you can see, first off, it's going to be quite a bit longer, but then it has entries in which there is theological discussion of the way the word is used, maybe by Matthew versus Paul, some background of how it's used in the Greek translation of the Old Testament, maybe even literature outside the New Testament, but there's more emphasis on the theology that biblical authors use this word for. So now Moises Silva is a very careful linguist, so he's not over-interpreting the words, but he's teaching us how to carefully read them in the context of different biblical authors. And let's take a look at NIDNTTE, and I just scanned in a page here And took us right to the word for peirazo, right? The same word, to test, to tempt. He gives you some glosses here: test, tempt, put on trial, and so on. Let's talk about what some of these things are. You can see these numbers here. Those are the numbers for the NIV concordance, but you don't have to use the NIV concordance, right? People who don't actually read Greek have to use these numbers to figure out where the words occur, but very soon, not in this chapter, but very soon, we're going to be learning about how to do concordance type searches directly on the Greek, not having to rely upon numbers to help us make sure that we're not missing a Greek word. We don't need to really use those. You can see also listed here are related words in Greek that build on the same root. You can transparently see building on the peir root, meaning testing or trying. Peira, peirasmas, peirao, ek peirazo, apeirastas, right? There are all these different related words. You can see how all of these different related words also give you this number that's keyed to the NIV concordance, but we don't need to do that because we're going to work directly with the Greek. We don't have to work with an English concordance. We'll talk more about that in a coming chapter. And what would you do, though, if you tried to look up the word peirazo alphabetically in the volumes and you find the word's not there? What would you do? Well, you go to the end of volume 5 where there is a Greek word index, and you would look up peirazo, and perhaps, of course, in this case, we know this is not, it might say there's not an entry for this, but instead look at this word, and it'll have some related word that it's referring you to, because NIDNTTE does not have a detailed entry for every word in the New Testament. They're focusing on more theologically significant words, whereas BDAG, the main Greek lexicon, is going to have an entry for every word in the Greek New Testament. Okay, but peirazo, the idea of testing, is a significant concept, a significantly repeated word, so there is going to be several pages discussion of it. Okay, let's also notice how here at the beginning of a definition, beginning of an entry, you'll have this down here, you'll say concept test. And what that's telling you to do is if you turn to the shaded section, there's some pages at the front of each volume that are shaded along the edge, and I have those scanned in. It lists concepts. So it's taking you here to the concept, I'll blow it up a little bit, of testing, tempting, approving. And then if you keep looking underneath that, it will list the Greek words that you will find that are in that domain, in that meaning category that cover that concept. So it's saying you might not only want to look up peirazo, which we were already at, and it has that little cross there saying this is the most significant discussion of this concept is found here. That's what the little cross means before the word. But you might also like to read the entry on deliadzo or dokimazo or skandalizo to see some of the nuances of difference between those, right? And it even helpfully in this list of concepts, again, this is found in the shaded section, a little shaded section along the edge of the page of each of the volumes there. It even gives you some scripture references that you might like to look at. So going back here to NID and TTE, we go down and we see that it's organized according to, it has GL, standing for general literature or Greek literature, discussing the way peirazo and its related forms appear and are used in Greek literature outside the Bible, non-biblical Greek literature. Then we look at Greek Jewish literature, especially the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, but also there are other significant Jewish literature in Greek, and so discussing how these words are used there. And then as we keep skimming down, maybe the most significant for our study is the New Testament section, and speaking about how this word is used by different biblical authors and the nuances of it, and how, some significant passages, for example, the Lord's Prayer. I mean, if you read through this, let's just be honest, you're not going to understand everything. I should have pointed out here, when we were up here earlier, and he's talking, Silva is talking about the Septuagint and then what the underlying Hebrew is. Well, you're not most of you can't read Hebrew, right? But don't worry about it, right? Just skim over what you don't know and take in what you can learn. And of course, there's Google and Chat GPT and all these things that you can, if you really want to know, you're like, I don't really know what this is. Well, Google it or ask a generative AI, Chat GPT, and oftentimes you'll get a decent answer there. As we keep going down through here, notice, again, do you see the length of the entry compared to BDAG? So a lot more discussion, especially if you're picking up, it's discussing particular biblical authors and how these words and concepts are being used there. Wow, right? Keep going. Notice how you had to learn to read Greek. You had to, when you look up words, you alpha, beta, gamma. You're singing along until you find the word you're looking for, finding the letter you're looking for. At the end, there's a bibliography. And let's be honest, the bibliography is going to be a little bit more scholarly and detailed than most of you will use, right? There's works that are listed in German. There's works that are listed in French. So now someone in here may be thinking, that's great. I speak French or I speak German. But most people, you can skim through that, but there are going to be a few things you don't understand. I just want to reiterate that. But there's so much that you can understand. There's so much that you will understand. And so that's why we're pointing you, now that you can actually read Greek words, we're pointing you to the two best resources you can use, BDAG and NID and TTE. Now, so that's the list. You need to get your church to buy those, put them on your Christmas wish list. That's what you want to acquire for yourself or for your Christian community that you can use together. I am going to discuss, as the chapter does, a few more things. So one of them is just to introduce you to a lexicon based on semantic domains. Remember, semantic is meaning, domain is meaning category. So if we had this in English, for example, imagine we had a lexicon or a dictionary based on semantic domains. If we look up the word chair, it would not be next to the word cherub, because cherub doesn't tell us anything about chair. It would have the word bench there. It would have the word sofa. It would have the word recliner. You see, it would have all the words related sitting things you sit on. And for someone who's learning English as a second language, this is really helpful, because you think, oh, okay, a bench is sort of like a long chair, and a sofa is like a soft bench, but it's something you really only have inside. And recliner is a chair that's usually soft, that leans back, and so wouldn't that be helpful to have that for Greek? Well, there is something like that for Greek, and it's usually called Louw-Nida. And essentially, if you use this, you're going to use it within a Bible software program. I think the print edition is out of print, but it's widely available within Bible software programs like Logos. It's 2 volumes. Why is it 2 volumes? Well, volume 2, we have to have a volume 2 that we can look up something alphabetically. And then that gives us a number that then we look up in volume 1, where we have the words that are dealing with the same semantic domain. Just like, if this were English, we would look up chair in volume 2, and it would give us 11.2 sitting, things you sit on. And then we go to 11.2 to chair, 11.3 bench, 11.4 sofa, 11.5 recline, and it would talk about the slight differences between them. Okay, so let's take a look at this. This is volume 2, just to be very clear. This is volume 2, and you'll notice it's in just Greek words in alphabetical order. Pain, penao, pera, peradzo. And here under peradzo, it's giving us these different meaning categories. It's saying, well, peradzo can mean to examine, and so if you want to know other words for examining, go here. It can mean to try to trap. It can mean to attempt. It can be it used as a substantive, as a noun, to refer to the devil, as the tempter. And so, but we're going to focus in on just one of these. Let's look at this section. Let's go to 88.308. We have to now to go to volume 1. We have to look up that number just in numerical order in volume 1. So I look up 88.308. Let's find it here. And there we go. 88.308. And it's going to have a discussion of peradzo and the related forms, ekperadzo, perasmas. You notice the definition: to endeavor or attempt to cause someone to sin, to tempt, to trap, to lead into temptation. Louw-Nida, again, that's what how people usually refer to this resource, Louw-Nida, is a resource that was created to help Bible translators. So sometimes you have some really interesting comments about rendering the Bible in different languages. It says, in translating the expressions involving tempting or trying is necessary in a number of languages to indicate clearly whether or not the temptation succeeded. It's interesting, isn't it? We only tend to think in English about these matters, but you have to think about what about in other languages. Now, at this point, you might say, well, what meaning category am I in? Well, skim back a little bit. Skim back to the beginning. Oh, I'm in the category here of sin, wrongdoing, or guilt, 88.289 to 88.318. So about 30 or so different words that relate to sin, wrongdoing, and guilt. So we have hamartano, hamartia, hamartema, patayo, right? All these different words related to sin or guilt. And it's, let's see how many pages we have. So we have 1, 2, 3, about 3.5. And so just imagine, it wouldn't take that long to sit down and carefully read through these and try to get a sense of the differences between them. Again, this is something you would need to do digitally now because this is scanned in print volume, but the idea is the same. And if you look in your actual textbook, Greek Word Studies for Everyone, there is a link to an abbreviated free online edition of Louw-Nida. It's much abbreviated. It's not in this much detail, but you might check it out. Think about it. It's just, there's such a wealth of possible resources. It's just a question of time, energy, and sometimes finances as well. But I would encourage you, don't be afraid to talk to leaders in your church. Raise the issue of making these kinds of resources available. All right. Let's talk about decent Greek word study tools that are free. Some people, just are so excited about free, but free isn't always the best. Okay, there's some decent resources that are free, right? Decent, but the best we've already mentioned above. Okay, for many, many years before BDAG and its predecessor BAGD were used as lexicons in seminaries and Bible colleges, Thayer was used. So for many years, I've talked to some elderly pastors, and that's what they used when they were in seminary. They used Thayer's lexicon. Rather than BDAG, they used Thayer. And in fact, many online Greek Bibles, if you click on a word and it gives you a definition, it usually, you can check and see, it usually is jumping to Thayer's. You say, why is it not jumping to BDAG? Because the University of Chicago doesn't license BDAG to be used in that way, right? It's you have to buy a copy. But Thayer's is in the public domain, and so it's frequently linked in online free Greek Bibles. It has a long, strange title, right? And in your Greek Word Studies for Everyone book, if you type in the URL, the website there, it will take you directly to the Internet Archive. It will come up like this, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but you can just move the little cursor here. You see it looks like a hand, and you can open up the lexicon where you like, and you can, if you look down here on the bottom right, you can zoom in as close as you want. And again, if you just want to turn one page at a time, you can just click on the page on the right and it will turn it. So it's just like reading a book, or you can click on the page on the left and it will turn it. So we're grateful for this classic resource that for many years was the best lexicon that students and pastors could obtain. There is a better one now, but this one is available free in the public domain. So maybe for a time period, it's the one that you're going to use, and that's okay. That's okay. Okay, and we'll also mention another free resource is Bill Mounce's free online Greek dictionary. Bill Mounce is a senior New Testament Greek scholar who I've gotten to know a little bit, and he's a great guy. He's produced a lot of great resources, and he's eager to help people learn to read the Greek New Testament. So if you go to the website that's listed in your textbook, Greek Word Studies for Everyone, it will take you here. And the easiest thing is just click on the letter. For example, we're looking at peirazo, so we could click on pi there, and it would take us, we'll do that in just a moment. Another thing you could do is type the word, and I had typed it in to test it beforehand, so there it is, peirazo. You can click search, it'll take you right there. How do you type Greek? Well, go to the website typegreek.com, and it's very intuitive. As you type with your keyboard, it will type the word in Greek. If you don't know what to do, look at the alphabet key, and it will instruct you on which Latin letter corresponds to which Greek letter when you type there. But we could just take peirazo. We could click search, and it will take us to the word. Just wait a second as it's... Oh, well, let's see. Is it going to do it? I don't know why it's not working, but let's click on pi here. It will take us to pi, and then we can just skim down here. You can see they're in alphabetical order. This is one reason why you had to learn the Greek alphabet. Hold on. There we go, peirasmas, peirazo, right? There it is, peirazo. And it's transliterated. It's written with the Latin letters there, and it gives a brief definition. We click on peirazo, and it gives us a little bit more information. It gives us some statistics. Found 38 times in the New Testament. Gives us a little more extensive definition. Gives us instances that as they're found in the Greek New Testament. So that's a great little resource there as well. Now, if you actually look at the textbook, and I highly, highly encourage you, do not rely simply on these lecture videos. These are just to supplement the chapters in the book. You really need to read through chapter 4. There's more there than I have time to cover in this overview lecture. Also, there's a final section there of other resources that go into more detail on, for example, a lexicon that focuses on the Septuagint, just the Greek translation of the Old Testament, and many other fascinating resources. A lexicon or a dictionary that deals with etymology. What is the etymology of these words? Just if that's ever a question for you. So all kinds of really amazing resources just to make you aware of. But we're only recommending, we'll come back here, we're recommending 2 that you use to be skilled and competent and to provide trustworthy results. We're recommending the BDAG lexicon, and we're recommending NID and TTE. You will not go wrong if you use those.